Welcome to our latest deep dive. Today, we are plunging into an incredibly intriguing topic that secretly impacts our lives every single weekend. We're talking about the bizarre and sometimes totally absurd history of outdated rules that still secretly dictate what we can and cannot do on a Sunday.
Let me kick things off with a totally crazy question for you. Why on earth can't you legally eat a scoop of ice cream on a slice of cherry pie on a Sunday in Kansas? I mean, it sounds like a joke, right? But it's actual reality. And trust me, it's far from the only example of the legal system holding on to the ghosts of the past.
Okay, let's really dive into this. There are a ton of head-scratching modern laws still on the books today. In Florida, you're technically banned from singing in a public place if you're only wearing a swimsuit. Seriously. In North Dakota, it's illegal for a restaurant to serve you beer and pretzels at the exact same time. And in Kansas, well, you've got that infamous dessert ban. So it begs the question, who came up with this and why? To figure that out, we need to dig a little deeper.
Section 1. Origins. How blue laws actually came to be. First off, let's clearly define what we're talking about. Spoiler alert, these weren't just random acts of boredom by lawmakers. They have deep historical roots. Blue laws are basically Sunday closing laws. Historians actually still debate where the colorful name comes from. Some think the very first laws in the New Haven colony were literally printed on blue paper. Others believe it comes from the old idiom, "true blue will never stain," which was basically used as a jab at overly strict Puritans.
What's genuinely fascinating here is the massive multi-century timeline. This whole thing started with the Romans. In 321 AD, Emperor Constantine issued a pagan edict regulating the Day of the Sun. By 386 AD, the Christian Roman Empire gave it a religious spin. This idea spread like wildfire, making its way into English law by the 17th century and eventually crossing the ocean with the colonizers.
And that brings us to America. Fast forward to 1610, and the colony of Virginia passed the very first American blue law. It made Sunday church attendance absolutely mandatory. And the penalty for a third violation? Literally death. No way, right? It really highlights the extreme severity of these early American iterations. This wasn't just about tradition, it was about harsh social control and survival.
Section 2. Colonial America and the Puritans.
As the young American nation grew, these rules adapted, and this map brilliantly illustrates a massive geographic and cultural divide. Over in New England, thanks to heavy Puritan influence, the laws were unbelievably strict. Fun fact, in 1656, a Boston captain was locked in the stocks for 2 hours just for kissing his wife on a Sunday after 3 years at sea. Meanwhile, out in the far west, the approach was way more relaxed, with far fewer restrictions.
To help wrap our heads around this, you can break early blue laws down into two main categories. First, you had general, blanket bans on all Sunday labor, business, and worldly amusements. Then, you had specific bans targeting activities deemed uniquely worthy of restriction on a holy day, things like horse racing, hunting, and of course, the sale of alcohol.
Section 3. Legal battles and exceptions.
As time went on, by the mid-20th century, citizens started heavily challenging all of this. The crucial turning point was the 1961 case of McGowan v. Maryland. 7 discount store employees were actually convicted for selling the most mundane things imaginable: a 3-ring binder, a can of floor wax, a stapler, and a toy submarine. It perfectly highlights the absolute absurdity of what was considered illegal to sell. Now, you'd probably assume the Supreme Court threw this out, right? Actually, scratch that. Nope. They upheld the laws. The court ruled that while they definitely had religious origins, they had evolved to serve a completely secular practical purpose, providing a uniform day of rest and protecting workers' health and welfare.
But despite that historic Supreme Court ruling, modern legal scholars are aggressively questioning if these laws still make any sense today. Research, like the academic analysis you see here from the Stanford Law and Policy Review, points out that these laws are essentially obsolete and often do more harm than good in our modern world.
Section 4. The Era of the Internet and Brunch.
In the 21st century, the digital revolution is totally breaking the old rules. Look at this. Brick-and-mortar stores are unfairly punished and forced to close by physical blue laws, losing out on profit. Meanwhile, online retailers are thriving globally 24/7, completely evading local Sunday rules. It builds a massive, unfair competitive disadvantage for local shops against giants like Amazon.
At the same time, societal habits are changing fast. People want their Sunday brunches and mimosas. We're seeing brunch bills sweeping local legislatures right now to chip away at liquor restrictions. Add in changing demographics, a diversifying religious landscape where Sunday isn't everyone's day of rest, and a huge rising demand for an extra day of shopping, and you've got a real recipe for change.
Section 5. The Desuetu Doctrine and Modern Absurdity.
Going back to the bizarre laws we mentioned at the start, why aren't we all getting arrested? Well, enter a fascinating legal loophole called the Desuetu Doctrine. Basically, it's a legal principle rendering a statute void when it's been entirely unenforced and openly, frequently violated by the public. It's the primary reason those weird swimsuit singing bands are essentially toothless today.
However, state legislatures still try to defend remaining Sunday liquor bans. They usually lean on a few modern justifications. They claim it provides stricter regulation of potent beverages, curbs potential abuse, limits underage access, and even helps keep competitive pricing among local merchants by forcing everyone to take a day off.
Section 6. Environmental and Economic Benefits of Repeal.
Wiping these laws off the books completely has some surprisingly practical benefits. Here's a wild environmental angle. Repealing Sunday hunting blue laws on the East Coast would literally double the available hunting time. Why does that matter? Because it offers a super efficient way to regulate the booming white-tailed deer populations that are currently damaging ecosystems. So an old religious law is actively impacting modern ecology? When you break it down, legal experts are calling for the total obsolescence of blue laws for 3 logical reasons. First, it saves legislators and the judiciary highly valuable time. Second, it hugely increases convenience for consumers and profits for retailers. And third, it boosts state tax revenue and overall economic activity. It's basically a win-win-win.
To bring our narrative full circle, it all comes down to this core takeaway. Most strange laws weren't written just because lawmakers were bored. They are created to solve very specific problems of their time. As we saw with the origins of blue laws, they maintained order early on and protected workers later. But as society evolves, the laws need to evolve with it.
So we've traveled from ancient Roman edicts all the way to modern Sunday pretzel bans. Knowing this history gives us the context to actually understand our legal system today. So what do you think? What outdated, bizarre law in your town definitely needs to go? Think about it. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, and we'll catch you next time.